Hi, Providence St. Mel students. Here I am at home, but I'm going to try to teach you just the same. Today we're going to do something we haven't really done a whole lot of in our Bible theater class. We are going to talk about the Bible and how it's organized. So right here I have just a little bit of a list of some of the sections of the Bible. The Bible is broken into two big sections called Testaments. There's an Old Testament and a New Testament. And in each section there are some different kinds of books. In the Old Testament there are books that are called the Pentateuch. There are books that are historical books. There are books that have poetry and wisdom. And there are books that were books written by the prophets. And then in the New Testament there are books that are the Gospels. There's one book called Acts. There are the books of the epistles or letters. And there's one last book called Revelation. So we'll talk just a little bit about each of those. And then I hope that you will also, for my assignment, you will do a little bit of looking into the Bible and finding some things in there. So first of all, I have the Pentateuch. So this is the first 5 books in the Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And so these 5 books have things that you know, like in Genesis you have the story of Adam and Eve and Noah and the ark. In Exodus you have the story of Moses and the plagues and things like that. Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy have a lot of laws and don't have as many stories. But these were the first 5 books of the Old Testament and the first 5 books in the Jewish Bible as well, the Pentateuch. Penta means 5. Like you have a pentagon, has 5 sides. That's what a Pentateuch, that's why it's called the Pentateuch. After that, we have a bunch of books of history. So these are the books of Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. And these all have books of history of Israel, things that happened. The book of Joshua and Judges have stories about different judges who served in Israel. 1st and 2nd Samuel has a lot about David when he was a boy and when he was anointed as king. About the first 3 kings. Saul was the first king of Israel, and then David was the second, and his son Solomon was the third. So it tells all about those people, and then it continues to do the history of Israel. After that, there are 5 books that we can call the books of poetry and wisdom. So Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. Psalms, a lot of them were written by David. He played the harp and he sang. He wrote songs. So Psalms are really a group of songs. One that probably is the most familiar is Psalm 23, which goes, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness." So a lot of these songs are still sung today. If you look through the book of Psalms, you'd probably see some words that you recognize from songs that you sing. Proverbs has advice. Ecclesiastes is kind of like a sermon. And these 3 books, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, were all written by King Solomon, who was a very wise king. He had a lot of interesting ideas, because actually one story is where when he was a little boy, he asked God for wisdom. If he could have anything else, he said, "God, you give me wisdom." And so God did. And he was a very wise, good king. A very wise king. So then we have the prophets, the books of the prophets. So there's a whole bunch of these. And so the prophets were people that told God's people what they should be doing differently, and a lot of them also prophesied and talked about Jesus coming, even though a lot of these books were written 1,000 or 500 years before Jesus was even born. But a lot of these books prophesy, they foretell about Jesus coming. So we have these books, all of these, and you'll hear these in my other recording where I teach you the books of the Bible song. All right? So those are the books of the Old Testament. The New Testament starts with 4 books that we call the Gospels. Now the gospel means good news. And what's the best news in the Bible? Jesus, right? And so these 4 books tell about Jesus. They tell about how he was born, how he lived, and then how he did miracles, and then how he died on the cross, and then how he was raised to new life, and then how he ascended into heaven. And so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all tell those stories about Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were all disciples of Jesus, people who followed him. And so they wrote down what they remember about Jesus, and that's what these books are. And then the book of Acts is the book about the early Christians. So after Jesus ascended into heaven, what did they do? Well, they had to start this new church. And so this was the Church of Jesus Christ. And it tells a little bit about the people traveling around and trying to spread the good news of Jesus. So that is those first five books in the New Testament. And then most of the rest of the books in the New Testament were all letters written by Jesus' disciples. And so Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Colossians, these were all books that were written to people. So the first book was written to the Romans. The second and third books here were written to the people who lived in Corinth. It was written to Corinthians, right? Galatia is another place. So the book of Galatians was written to the Galatians. And the Galatians were the people who lived in Galatia. The people who lived in Ephesus were called Ephesians. So there's a letter written. A lot of these were written by a man named Paul. So Paul wrote to the people who lived in Ephesus and said, this is how you should live. This is how you should be a good Christian. This is how you should try to remember who Jesus is and how we should try to spread that good news. So that's just a little bit about how all of those books are organized in our Bible. And so here's one of my Bibles. It's very thick. Lots of pages in a Bible, right? And so what I want you to do now is now that you know a little bit about how things are organized, I want you to also try to open up a Bible. If you have one at home, wonderful. If you do not, I'll include a link for you from our website to BibleGateway.com. For that one, you just type BibleGateway.com or click on my link, and then you can just type in, if I say look for Luke 15, just type Luke space 15, and then it'll come up and it'll show you it. So if you don't have a Bible at home, you can definitely use Bible Gateway. And so, if you have a Bible, if you flip through the first few pages, you'll find probably a list of the books. So here is my list of the books. And so if I'm looking for Genesis, you can see Genesis starts on page 2. Or if I'm looking for the New Testament, here's the New Testament books. If I'm looking for Luke, it says Luke starts on page 1656. Lots of pages. And so then I will go, if I'm looking for, let's say I'm looking for Psalms, it says Psalms starts on page 822. I flip through all the pages. Now I'm on the 700s. I have to go to the 800s. So 802 is what I said. 822? That's what I said. 822. So here now I'm in the Psalms, and at the top it says Psalm 4. So then if I'm looking for, let's say I'm looking for Psalm 23, if I flip No, there's Psalm 17. I have to go a little further. Little further. Oh, here's Psalm 23. And there it is, Psalm 23, and look what it says. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So you're just going to do a little bit of practicing, looking through. I have a worksheet for you to fill out as you look through the Bible and as you use this video also as a reference. And then I have another book with a song for you to learn. Another video with a song for you to learn. All right? See you there.